I think the title of our discussion tonight is something to do with the Buddha's vision. I think the vision, sometimes, I don't know, maybe I'm not understanding it well, but anyway, the vision, the term vision seems to also have the connotation of some sort of a plan. Now, if you interpret the word vision as a plan, then I don't know whether Buddha and the Buddhist have any plan. This is something that I need to express. Buddhists have never been good with a mission, and I don't know whether we could talk about Buddhist vision and mission kind of vision. But tonight, the choice of the word vision is really much to do with how Buddha and thereafter his students or the followers sees the world. And I think this may be interesting for some of you who are new, how Buddha saw or how Buddha interact or how Buddha relate to the world. Now, there are many different elements of how Buddha saw the world. We don't have time to go through all of that. I will choose few that I think is crucial. Buddha, in Buddha's view, he saw that there's something called mind, which is really probably the most important. So, yes, it may be kind of it's very, I don't know, for me to say this sounds very simple, but it's actually not. I think, I don't know whether the world has paid enough attention to this thing called mind. Yes, we do. We have paid so much attention to the matter and the material and so on and so forth, but the mind, this was something quite very much stressed by the Buddha 2,500 years ago. And this is one of his vision or his view. He put so much emphasis on this. And I think this is something that we should also pay attention, because mind is, as many Buddhists would say, mind is, it's in some way, it is something that we are stuck with. You cannot not have. I mean, you can sort of, if you don't want your fingers, you can chop. You can sort of take off your shirt or whatever. You can sort of not have matters. But mind is, you cannot really eject it. You are stuck with this. Sometimes one almost wish to be like a table, no mind. Therefore, if I'm not using this table, the table will not feel like I'm being rejected. Table don't, if I bring another better table, table will not feel jealous. If all of us leave from this room, table will not feel lonely. And also, but if I'm overly using this table, table is never going to think that I'm overly used and abused. So on and so forth. So see, but unfortunately, we are not like a table. We are stuck with this thing called mind. So mind is a bit of a problem sometimes. But other times, mind is incredibly precious and so good. It is this mind that really appreciates simple things like a breeze, river, I don't know, smell, flowers. In fact, Buddha, in certain way of presenting so-called mind, he even went as far as saying that this mind that we have, you have, I have, this mind is the Buddha. That's it. Buddha is not a figure. It's not historically bound. It's not some sort of a savior, or definitely not a, well, you can say Buddha is a creator in the context that the mind is the creator. Everything we have is basically created by mind. So anyway, this is one view that Buddha had. Something quite important, that, and something that could be rewarding if especially the modern people can pay some attention to. Then another thing, Buddha, now this is a little bit long. This mind, therefore, these beings, those who have this mind, has preference. We prefer happiness over pain, anxiety, suffering. So we prefer happiness. Now this gets more complicated because then happiness, the mind interprets happiness totally in different way. So this is why what is happiness for you, maybe not necessarily happiness for me. In fact, many times what is happiness for me may be a suffering for you. And not only it's different individually, but within one individual being, what is good and what is happy and what is blissful today will be not necessarily happy and blissful tomorrow, so on and so forth. So this is why, I don't know, especially for those who are new, whether you have ever heard something called Four Noble Truths, which is a very classic Buddhist sort of testament or a Buddhist teaching. And the first noble truth is actually what we call know the dukkha, meaning know the pain or know the suffering. No. Now, this is a very important. I think I would say this is something very unique about the Buddha. He wasn't really talking about you should really try to get rid of suffering, or there's a, we should, instead of saying that, the most important statement he made was know the suffering. Now, for a lot of us, suffering or the pain that are obvious, such as headache, stomach ache, war, famine, I don't know, poverty, obviously they are suffering, and we know. That, I think, is easy. But what we don't know is what we call bliss and happiness most of the time. Actually, according to Buddha, they are also not really completely satisfactory. what we call bliss, what we call happiness. So, strictly speaking, the Buddhists will say that what we call happiness is actually in the category of suffering. So therefore, the statement, know the suffering, became kind of important because one would feel, oh, it's easy to know the suffering. Yes, if it is like gross suffering, such as hunger, thirst, or I don't know, headache, so on and so forth. But when you are having a good time, to know that as a suffering is much more difficult. Now, there's something even more complicated than that. That is any kind of neutral feeling, neither pain nor pleasure, just neutral, feeling, or feeling, mainly feeling, like, I don't know, sleeping, spacing out, whatever, not necessarily painful, not necessarily happy, but even that, according to the Buddhists, the Buddhists may put this into the category of what we call dukkha. Now, I have to tell you this. I'm speaking in English, which is not my, original language. So I have that deficiency, first of all. And secondly, the language is going to be a big barrier. It has always been. So the word like dukkha is translated as a suffering by a lot of people, but it's not really suffering as in what a lot of people think. But anyway, I think some of these problems, it will take some time to sort it out. But okay, so I'm talking about Buddha's vision. So this is what Buddha sees. Everybody wants to be happy. Nobody wants to be suffering. Now, this, but what Buddha is saying is that, yes, it's important to be happy, but it's very important to be beneficial. To have happiness is good, but also to have something beneficial. This he stressed a lot. To be happy is important, but to have something that benefits you, this is equally important, if not more important at times. Now, beneficial and happiness, they are very related, but at times they also contradict. So this is something that I thought I will just briefly mention to you before we go to the question and answer. Because a lot of the time we find ourselves really, really working hard for happiness. But many times we don't really work hard for something that will benefit you. I think that's very commonsensical, actually. So you may ask, what is beneficial? Okay, we got the point of, something that will make you happy. And I've already told you that for different beings, happiness means different things. Now, what should one do to collect or to have something that is beneficial? So this is another Buddha's vision or the Buddha's view on life. Buddha what Buddha is saying is, yes, it is possible to make ourselves happy by going to think about the past. Memories, especially good memories, I guess. And also think about the future. it's possible to make yourself happy. But to make things beneficial, not that important to rush to the past and to think about the future. It's not that beneficial. This is his view. So what really brings you something that is beneficial? Buddha's argument is not to go to the past, not to go to the future, but to be here in the present. Because after all, this is all you have. The past is gone, future hasn't arrived. So what's the benefit of thinking of the past and the future? So let's just put everything towards what we have right now. Okay, now this is very much, okay, this is also related to another Buddha's view, which is Buddha's sort of argument is that only by being in the present, one will see the truth. The moment you go to the past and the future, chances of you getting entangled with the false stories, imagination is much, much higher. Only when you are in the present, you have much more chance to see the truth. Okay, of course, now the word truth is such a big word. I don't know what you are getting when I'm saying the word truth, but just some very, very basic Buddha's view of truth. So, okay, so not to go to the past, not to go to the future, but to be in the present and to relate to the truth. What kind? Well, how about just accept that we are all going to die. So this, statement like this has also earned some really bad marketing for Buddhists for a long time. It still does. They always think the Buddhists are always very morbid, I don't know, very sad and very, but sad or not, the truth is you and I are going to die. And might as well just accept it, you understand? So it's like narrowing down to the present. And something worse, as if the fact that you and I are going to die is not enough bad news, there's something worse than this. We don't know when we are going to die. That's much more worse. If we have a time, like, okay, July 22nd, you are going to die, then, it's much easier. You can plan and you can, but that's not the case. Most of the time, actually, 99% of the time, we don't know how we are going to die, when we are going to die. And by the way, death, I'm only bringing it just because it's a very dramatic example. Actually, it's not only when we talk about being in the present, we are not only talking about the death, we are talking about the changeable nature of everything. Everything. We have changed so much, and we are changing all the time. I'm not talking about skin. I'm not talking about hair color. I'm talking about just everything, values, just everything. Once upon a time, you were playing with a water gun. You were carrying a Barbie doll. Now you are not carrying Barbie doll. Now you have a different toy. Now the Barbie doll is like not at all important. Once upon a time, you cried, you screamed, that's the only thing that matters in the whole wide world, the Barbie doll, the gun, whatever. But that value has changed. Now we have a different value. tablecloths, I don't know, whatever, all kinds of relationship, the value of relationship. And a lot of change comes, of course, the main change comes from inside, but there's also outer, cause and conditions that forces us to change. And so on and so forth. So anyway, this is one way to really face the truth and face the present moment. Now, the second way to be truthful to ourselves is that nothing will satisfy us 100%. Nothing. And we are not only talking about food and clothes, we are not talking about this kind of, the usual luxury goods. We are talking about our values, political system, philosophical system, nothing. I mean, just look at past 10 years, past 20 years. I still remember when the world of internet arrived. Everybody, including myself, was so happy because it saves so much trouble. And it's like now that we can just read about everything free. And, the information is readily available. You can communicate with the world instantly without really anybody knowing what you are doing, so on and so forth. But now we are going through a situation where, is that a good thing? Are we having more fun or are we having less fun? Are we getting more stress? So on and so forth. See, nothing really satisfies 100%. But you see, all this, what I just said, these are all in one way on the intellectual level, right? On the intellectual level, it's sort of, I can convince you through talking like this, and perhaps you will have to sort of agree. Yes, of course, everything is changeable. You have to agree with that. Nothing satisfies you 100%. You will have to agree with this because that's the truth. But this kind of knowledge, this kind of realization is only on the intellectual level. So it does not really help us when there is a problem. It doesn't really penetrate our habitual mind. So now, how do we tackle with this? So this is why the technique of not going to the past, not going to the future, and being in the present. And when we talk about the present, we are talking about today, this year, this week, right this very moment, the fact that I'm here, you are there, just everything. Being in this very moment. Not thinking about future such as maybe I should pick that up, pick that flower up and put it here. Not really thinking like that. Just completely acknowledging that it is there and the table is here and I'm here. And even more, it gets more refined when we say present moment. We are not only talking about the present moment of today and this evening, but the present moment body. You have a body. And most of the time, we are never happy with the body. The reason why we are not happy with the body is because we are thinking about the past or we are thinking about the future. how it should look like, how much it should weigh, so on and so forth, using the past and the future as a reference. Never just be in the body and be comfortable with the body. And not even more than that, just being in the body. And then it gets even more refined. These are all the Buddha's view or the Buddha's vision of life or the world. Even more subtle than the body is just acknowledging and knowing we breathe. See, all this sounds very, very simple. But these are so beneficial. It may not necessarily bring you happiness, but this brings you something called beneficial. And even more subtle than your breathing the air, this cognition, the mind that you have. You have thoughts, you have mind, you are cognizing something right this very moment, just observing that. So in this way, very important Buddha's view or the vision of life is really, really just be with this moment, this truth. Now the third one, the third kind of view of view or the vision of the Buddha is to so that we will live with the truth, is that appearance is deceiving. This is actually an English expression, and that is, I think, a good way to approach to this Buddha's argument. Basically, whatever you see, however you project, however you hear, however you taste, whatever you feel, however you smell, however you, I don't know, yeah, basically, however you project, perceive, is just your perception. It is not, this is only your opinion, it's not how it is. Basically, what Buddha is actually saying is everything is just a hallucination. Now, I think the hallucination in the English dictionary, which I checked again and again, is something to do with the mental disorder, right? So when we talk about, see, I was telling you earlier, mind is very important. Remember, the table doesn't have mind. We are stuck with it. But this mind is not really in order, so to speak. Why? Because it's going to the past and going to the future. We just don't let it remain orderly. So actually, if you are rushing to the past and the future, your mind is in disorder. So the Buddha's conclusion is whatever we are experiencing through your eyes, ear, tongue, mind, body, is mere hallucination. It's a projection coming from disorderly mind. Now, this is sort of a small, very, very rushed summary of what we in Buddhism, we call prajna, wisdom. Now, this is not enough. The Buddha's view or the Buddha's vision is this is not enough. Equally important to this wisdom is what you need, compassion. And I think the word compassion maybe is not really doing the justice, translating the word karuna. I think the easiest way to approach to the Buddhist concept of compassion is empathy. This is like okay, the wisdom of knowing whatever we have been discussing, plus empathy. Basically, very mundane, down to earth empathy we can start with. Basically putting your feet in someone else's shoes. Now, this is difficult, really, really difficult, because because we all have a different cause and conditions. We all comes from a different background. We all come from different habitual patterns. So I think we have this tendency that everybody must think, act, and behave, and value what you think, what you behave, what you value. And this creates not only international problem, domestic problems it creates relationship problems between parents and children, between lovers, between, colleagues, lacking of the empathy. So anyway, this, what we call wisdom and the method, is like the Buddha's view or the vision to make the world beneficial and also happy. I don't know whether everything what I've just said was cohesive. Anyway, let's begin with some of the questions. Maybe I talked too much.